Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on. I can't really see your faces because there's lights, but I can hear your response. Good afternoon. Awesome. So I'm so really privileged to be closing out today's session on women who lead with a topic that we can relate to in all areas of our lives. And as we were wrapping up the last panel, we were talking about a balance between our personal social media profiles and our professional social media profiles. And how can you be authentic? And so the conversation around balance really dovetails into what we're going to talk about right now, which is a broader sense of how we balance. But before we get into what we can glean from our panelists and then into your questions, I am going to ask everyone to just take a minute to introduce yourselves and then maybe share 2 or 3 things that you daily try and balance.
All right, I guess I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharna Barnes. I'm actually the CEO of a group of companies, or underneath our company, we offer government consulting services, as Stephanie talked about. We assist businesses in getting contracts with the government, so we do that by writing bids and responding to proposals. We also, underneath that group of companies, we have a call center. So I am also the CEO of that as well. That call center, as Stephanie states, runs throughout different parts of the US, Jamaica, and Colombia. And then we also, underneath our group of companies, a construction firm that I am also the CEO of. So that construction firm, as the name implies, it does construction services, mostly in specialty trades. So with that is the secular juggling. And then the personal side is I am a mom of none. But I do have a husband, so I have to juggle that. And about 60% of my immediate family work in the business in some shape or form. So that in itself requires special juggling. So that's it for me.
That's it. Okay. Lisa, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Guadalupe Clarke. I am the founder and CEO of ATL Search Group. And also, I am a community leader for the Latino community. I try to lift up women because I was raised by a single mom. And I do want to say, wow, we all deserve a nice round of applause because we could be in so many places and we're here today. So go ahead and give yourself a round of applause, please. One of the things that, of course, I'm a mom and I volunteer a lot in the community. I'm a wife, and as a founder, CEO of a growing staffing company, time is so precious. But what I try to do is wherever I am, I try to be present. If I'm at work, I try to focus on work. If I'm at home, I try to focus on the kids. And I do have to have time, and this is for a lot of us that have a spouse, have time for my husband. Because the person he married, I change, he's changed. So we continually have to date each other. We've been together for 28 years. So, yes. So he always tells me I'm the spicy Latina because I always tell him I was minding my own business and this is what happens. And he's like, Lisa, you never mind your own business. What did you got me into now? But I think at this point he's a little used to it.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Tracy?
Yes, well, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Brundage, and I'm the president of ABAC, right across the street. So I didn't have to go too far, but I was juggling a number of different meetings today to be able to be here, but it's just so wonderful to be here. And as you know, if you don't know, we have just slightly under 4,000 students, so it's a pretty busy job. And not necessarily a 9-to-5 job. So we wear many hats, and I happen to share with many of the ladies on the stage today some of those same hats as a wife and a mother of 2 preteen girls that go to different schools. So between all of our schedules, it makes life pretty interesting, as well as family members back in Pennsylvania and the community, really trying to learn a new community, just moving here this past summer and really trying to get affiliated and understand the new state, the institution, the programs, and the community and region at large. So it's wonderful to be here, but it is fast-paced, and it is one of those things that every day you're really trying to be mindful of those priorities and really understanding and working hard to be present and mindful and structured, really, which really helps me go from where I need to go. So thanks, it's great to be here.
Good, and that'll lead right into our first question. And so we can seek work-life balance, but first we have to define what that looks like. Lisa, why don't we start with you? You shared a little bit about some of the things that you're trying to balance, but how are you defining work-life balance?
Gosh, I gotta tell you, I try to make a list every day and it goes out the garbage most of the time, especially in staffing industry, those of us who deal with personnel issues. But one thing that I do want to always make sure I make priority is my family, no matter what I'm doing. And yes, I may forget a meeting or something because we're not perfect. Something have to suffer. Sometimes it's my family, sometimes it's my business. But no matter what, the days that are important for my kids, I am always there. I have 3 teenage daughters. I know, I'm going great. But I try to be and be present. So I try to put my phone away even though it keeps going because I want them to know that they matter to me too. And for women, a lot of times we feel guilty because we cannot always be there. Sometimes I miss things because I'm out of town, but I always call them and let them know how proud I am of the work that they're doing and to know that no matter what, I'm their mama first and a businesswoman second. And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle, especially in our careers. I work in a very male-dominated industry. And when I was an outside salesperson, I used to tell my clients I come in a package, and they didn't understand what that means. I will bring my kid in a stroller and park her on the corner, and I said, I'm a working mom. And I think I got a lot of respect from that, from a man perspective and from a female, just trying to know that I was a mother and a working mom, trying to provide for my family. So never apologize if you have to cancel something because you have something with your family.
That takes courage. It takes discipline too. So absolutely. All right, Sharna, what about you? How are you defining work-life balance?
Well, for me, seeing that I don't have any kids yet, for me, work-life balance is making sure me is in the equation. You know, a lot of times we think work-life balance have to be, okay, even if it's the family, someone else have to be there. But I feel like work-life balance is you having your time, me time. And that gets a little bit tricky because, as I said, 60% of my family works in a business. So if we're home and, you know, my husband and I are having a great meal and we're like, okay, no work talk at the table. And then it starts off great. But then somehow work gets involved, you know, or my stepdaughter is a manager of the construction company, and my husband will call her up on a Sunday at 10 p.m. and be like, hey, I need you to do this Monday morning. And, you know, he wonders why she don't answer his calls on the weekends and only answer mine. But yes, but I feel like work-life balance for me is really just making sure you have some time for you, whatever that looks like, some time for you away from everyone else.
Thank you, Sharna. And Tracy, you just mentioned in between meetings, 2 preteen girls and running a campus. How are you defining that work-life balance?
Yeah, a couple things though before I just give you that personal definition that I just wanted to piggyback on what the other panelists have said. As a leader in education, I have told my employees for the past quarter of a century since I've been in higher education, family first. Bless you out there. So family first. I think that that's just so critical and so important to make sure that people understand that you yourself have your own priorities in line. And also just, when we go and we take a flight somewhere, not to be a cliche, but to have a cliche here, but they always say put the oxygen mask on first before you can do anything to help anybody else. So if you are not not in balance. And I think most of us in the room probably can feel when we're out of that balance to an extent. Not that it's perfect every day, because every day you have to kind of go in with it and it's a different schedule, but you do your best. And I think showing up, when we said about wearing those multiple hats and having those many roles, showing up with intentionality, focus, and commitment, because it's a saying that resonated with me for many, many years, is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so really just showing up, being mindful. It's not perfect, but learning to prioritize, plan, and structure my day really helps me with that balance.
That structure and that prioritization, I hear you entirely. Yeah. And that also takes discipline. And as we get into this, I think we'll find some themes, and discipline will be among them in terms of how do you create boundaries and can you keep those boundaries. But being able to analyze one's workload and then setting those realistic boundaries, it not only promotes efficiency and quality control in our work, but it also enhances mental health and engagement. How can women learn to assert themselves and prioritize their own work while maintaining a collaborative culture? Who wants to go first? Lisa, you like to talk. I know you.
But I would tell you this, one of the things that I think most of us are guilty of is not giving us a break. And one thing that I am very conscious that I purposely was one of my goals for this year is I see myself as the captain of my ship, whether it's at work or my home, and I have to be taken care of, because if I'm not well, my ship is going to sink. So a lot of times, I hear a lot of women, oh, I read all these books. No, my thing is to completely disconnect and go for nature. Water is one of the things. Go for a nice walk and just clear my mind. Because a lot of times, whether it's work that's pulling me or my teenagers think I'm their own personal Uber a lot of times, and I fail to take care of myself because I'm so busy taking care of everyone else. So having that time for myself to make sure I'm okay is key. And I really encourage all of you, whether it's to go out for a cup of coffee with a friend, go for a walk, if you want to read a book or whatever, just take a couple of hours over the weekend for yourself, because it will reset your mind and you will feel so much clearer when you're making tough decisions, whether it's at home or at work.
That also is a great model for those in our charge or those we serve, whether it's our families or our employees or our colleagues. If we can demonstrate that, they start to learn it themselves and they can adapt it so that it benefits them. They can also set boundaries where you're not constantly taking care of them and intruding into your me time. So I appreciate you sharing that. Sharna.
Well, for me, I myself, I definitely had to set boundary. I remember first starting off the business in 2015, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have an open door policy. Then 2 years into that, I decided it has to be a semi-open, because we have a team of 400 employees. So for us, it's like, okay, well, and then being that 60% of my immediate family are a part of the business, somehow they find a way, they take open door policy literally. They'll go through any entrance, the door, the window, the AC vent, So I realized that I have to find a filter with me, being the CEO of the group of companies, I have to realize that I had to implement either an assistant or some sort of filter person so that my access wasn't that easy. Then I never give out my personal cell phone number. I don't care how close we are as employees. The only persons that have my personal cell phone number is my family member, unfortunately. But
that's 60% of your workforce? Yeah. Okay.
I don't give that out. And then one thing I had to realize too is that it's okay to say no. As women, we have to work twice harder than our male counterparts, and we turn into yes responders, right? So my favorite quote, and I've heard employees mimic me with it, where I say, my workday concludes at 5 p.m., but I'll make this a priority first thing in the morning. So that is it's a way to say no nicely, you know? So that's what I've used to still have a cultural workforce, but still keep my mental intact.
I like that. I'll take care of this in the morning with a big smile.
Yes.
Right? Good. We heard about smiling when you're responding or in the panel before this, so and I appreciate that also. All right, Tracy, how about for you?
Well, I've become much better with this over the years, but the process is indeed iterative. I think you can get into a cadence and a flow and learning to prioritize. Again, I hate to come back to that word, but I think it's just so critical. And you really could choose to spend all of your time at work. You could. I know in my job, it's really tough to understand, you know, the on-off button because it's not easy to just say, okay, I'm just done. But I think one of the things that has helped me, at least professionally, is really trying, as a CEO, is to say, okay, this is the compass, this is where we're going, these are the goals, and you know, really trying to talk with people about you know, priorities, deadlines, individual accountability, what we can do, what we can't do, what the deadlines are, and really trying to keep it as tight as what you can within that time frame, because, you know, I have a famous saying like, well, we really don't want to go down any rabbit holes because it's tough sometimes to reel that back and get in, and time, you know, our time here is finite. Our resources and our capacity sometimes, you know, they're finite as well. And so just really staying focused on what we're trying to accomplish within that day, understanding that, you know, there's going to be a lot that you're going to carry over. And in my work anyway, sometimes it's not a one-touch type of thing, particularly with decisions that are sometimes very involved and layered, that you may have to touch something numerous times, and that's okay, because if you're somebody who likes to check things off the list, sometimes it's not always easy. It continues on the list the next day and the day after that until you can get some clarity around that and understand. But I think being clear and being transparent and honest and having people understand that that's your management style, and so that, you know, people have an understanding of, okay, this is where we're going right now. This is where we're heading, you know, long term. You know, this is the short game. This is the long game. And I think that really helps take some of the guesswork out of the equation. And I think, you know, again, at home, I think we've said it, you know, it's the same themes that continue to resonate. It's not easy for me because I find myself thinking about things and I have to really catch myself and bring myself back into the moment and have that focus with the people closest to me, because it is a job for me that is really 7 days a week. I mean, you're on all the time. So how do you choose to throttle back in those moments to be really focused and mindful of, you know, who you're with and where you are?
You have said it. And I think everybody in this room relates to a job that at least feels like it's 7 days a week and the lines are blurred between who you serve, what you serve, when you serve them. And so, Tracy, I'll piggyback off that. And you've been in the workforce a long time. You've led teams for a long time. How, through the course of your career, have you built confidence in the resiliency to make the decisions that you make, to create these boundaries, set these expectations, and to take care of yourself?
Well, I can tell you early in my career, and I continue to do it even now, is really just seeking people out. You would think that when you reach a certain point in your career that there wouldn't be other people that you would be seeking out as mentors, or just even people that you can talk to, that you can get some level of acceptance just as a sounding board sometimes, because I think we all need that. Because people, you know, there are, you know, when you peel back the layers, you know, we are all people too, trying to juggle a great deal at times. And some days are messy and chaotic as all can be. And it, you know, I shake my head sometimes like, well, that didn't go at all the way I wanted it to go, but I got through it. And you get to the end of the day, and I think the biggest thing is really trying not to ruminate too much. That's my biggest problem, is because I can be a tad bit of a perfectionist and I want everything to be just so. And sometimes you have to roll from one thing to the next, and you don't always have, the adequate amount of preparation because there are only so many hours in the day. But I think if that little bit of grace, I guess, to say, I did what I could, I did the best that I could, and that's okay, and it's going to have to be okay today, and keeping those priorities straight in terms of the non-negotiables, like what is non-negotiable in your life, and what really does have the utmost sense of urgency that you have to take care of. And I think you do get better with it, and I use the analogy about the pendulum and the swinging, because when that is not in alignment and it is out of balance, things, it's not doing its job. And I think that that's just so critical for all of us that are juggling, each day. Every day for me, that's what I love, actually, is that each day I juggle different priorities all the time. I deal with different content areas all the time. I knew that from a very young age that I was attracted to that type of work, that I would not be able to go in and do the same thing every day. But because of that, that does create challenges in terms of making sure that you're adequately prepped, that you're ready to go. And some days are easier than others, but seeking resources and trying not to feel isolated, I think, is really critical, particularly trying to find those relationships with other women that can really relate and talk with you about some of the struggles and challenges that you'll encounter, because it happens for all of us.
That is sound advice I think everybody here could certainly lean to. And I know we just had a panel on mentorship and seeking those alliances related to that. And then progress over perfection. I will tell you, we wrote this into what we believe at our organization. I told my board, if perfection is the expectation, we're not going to meet it, but we will hit 90-95%, which isn't quite 100, but it's progress. And so that gives you some grace to constantly be growing. And now I'm just sharing with you my personal life story on how I try and keep some sanity as well. But
Yep,
we'll continue to hear from our distinguished panelists. Lisa, why don't you share with us the same?
Well, I would tell you, as a small business owner, when I started my business, I made a lot of mistakes. And it was hard for me to swallow that pill. But at the same time, the second time, I was like, well, I know what not to do, right? And one thing I discovered in the process is what I'm able to do and what I cannot do. And if I cannot do something, I hire someone that can, because it would save me a lot of headaches. Because a lot of times, in the staffing industry especially, and having a small business, we don't have 50 people working for us in the office that could tackle just one thing. We have to juggle different things at once. And one thing that I learned is also to try to embrace my team so they could make decisions on their own. Like when they come and ask me, hey, can I do this? We have this problem. And I say, well, how will you solve it? Because I want them to be self-sufficient. And I do the same thing in my house with my kids. I tell them, and if they feel strong about it, the decision, I was like, whatever the outcome is, you got to own it. And if you fail, you get up, that's yourself, and you figure it out again. And that's one thing that is important for me, is transparency. And even with my team, when they make mistakes, they let me know, hey, I messed this up, how can I fix it? And I say, how do you think you should fix it? And then guide them a little bit, because a lot of them are younger than me, and I see they want to learn. They're like little sponges, but they also need direction. And those of us who work with millennials will know that they're very smart, but they're different type of smart, and sometimes they will teach you they will teach you things that you need to learn, like patience. And to know that, like, if they're really quiet doesn't always necessarily mean that they're working, so you kind of have to check on them. Because they probably are in social media,
Yeah.
being an influencer. So
They're working on their professional brand.
yeah. But also they teach me things, like the other day I was so excited because one of them say, oh my God, I want to tell you, you inspire me. And I'm thinking work related, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, what I do? And she's like, I went and cooked pasta today. And I was like, oh, great. So just taking the good, the bad, and finding a place of saying, you know what, this is okay. When things don't go your way, just embracing the small wins that will take you to the big win. It is huge for us as a team.
Absolutely. All right, Sharna.
Well, for me, when I think about resiliency, I go back to when I first started, like back in 2015. A little bit about me, I used to be in the government. So I used to be in procurement, and I used to be a part of the team that would put out the bids, and I would review the proposals when they come in, and I saw that a lot of business owners will submit, and they just missing the mark. So in 2015, I resigned from my government job to open up my business. And my family thought I was crazy. They're like, who leaves the government, with all that benefits and security to open up a business? And being a first-time entrepreneur for the family, nobody else have ever done that before, took a lot of resiliency. And I just remember going through my first year and struggling because it wasn't popping off like I thought it would. I thought I would be, making the buck. But then reality started hitting, and I was like, ooh, maybe I was crazy. Because, when the savings are going down, and it really got tough even for me, because I remember getting an eviction letter from my landlord saying, hey, I know you were great paying the rent before, but I don't know what's going on. You're not missing the mark. And I just remember getting my first contract, and we had to get a team of 12. So I was making payroll on my already depleted funds, and I had to I remember going to the bank, and the bank was like, well, no, on the loan. You're just through a year. No, we're not going to take that risk with you. And then I remember just really struggling. I had to pawn my furniture and everything in the house. And when I say everything, I mean everything: the TV, the furniture, the bed, just to make that first 30 days. And if you know government, you work 30 days, then you got to work another 30 days to get paid. So 60 days of just struggling, but I knew that I had to just push through. I had to just push through. And then God sent a savior, my husband, thank God, thank you. He came in and provided that financial and emotional support that I needed to stop me from drowning. And sometimes I think back and I'm like, oh my God, what was he thinking? This girl, she has no bed, says she's running a business, oh my gosh. But 8 years later, it's the best decision I've made. So when I think about resiliency, that's what I go back to, my initial days of pushing it through, even though I felt like I couldn't make it, just pushing it through. And then just looking at all the employees that depend on the businesses to feed their family. That for me is true confidence.
That's powerful. How do you stay grounded? And then how do you take care of yourself? Hopefully you have a bed now, you're getting some rest.
Yes.
Hopefully that's happening. It's a great bed, one of those dreamy mattresses. But how do you stay grounded, and how do you take care of yourself? And then we'll just go down the line with sharing some of that.
Well, for me, in order to stay grounded and take care of myself, I go back to my me time, right? I try to have some time for me. Every month I have a recurring massages, I have recurring facials, I have recurring waxes that I just, I go do my pedicure and manicure just by myself. I don't want anyone with me. That's just my me time where nobody else can get to me. I travel a lot, whether that's business or personal, but even if it's business, I make sure there's personal time in that. So I find a way or a day or two, I put my phone on do not disturb because the families call. So, just to have that me time. My girlfriends and I, we try every year to go to a different country we've never been. So this year we're going to Greece at the end of the month. And then last year we went to Dubai. And then the husband and I, we plan annual trips each year to just go out, whether it's locally to rent an RV and drive to a state we've never been to, or go to a country we've never been to. This year we're going to Australia in August. So that's for me. It's just having the me time and then a break mentally from everything else.
Very good. Lisa?
For me, it's a little different. as a Salvadorian American, I was born in New York, but raised in El Salvador doing the work, which is another story. But sometimes I have to remember where I came from and be thankful for where I am standing now. Because everything that my mother and I own when I first came to this country was donated from a Christian nonprofit organization. My clothes, my bed, everything. So I always to check myself personally, because sometimes you get invited to big tables. I never let that get to my head, because I remember where I started. And bringing other women and other people along with me is important. And if I could be a mentor to a student, I always take my time to do that. And sometimes if I'm speaking at a school or a place that they invite me to speak, and I may say something that resonates with somebody, I don't know who this word is for, but one of the things that I always tell myself, I didn't come this far to be this far, no matter how hard things get in my life. So for someone that is going through that right now, I would tell you, you didn't come this far to be this far. Remember where you were before, and you don't want to get there again. You are responsible for driving your own ship, so get out from where you are. So a lot of times it's very easy for me to say, wow, look, I made it, right? And then it kind of brings me back to where I started. And then I take some time to look at all the wins that you do when you're down, when you're doubtful about the decisions that you're making, whether it's your career or your personal life. Look how far you come, and don't let that bring you down.
Tracy, I hope everyone is writing these in bullet points to take away with you, because there's some real wisdom being shared here. Tracy, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I think for me, to stay grounded, like to your point, is some days you have to be careful what you ask for, right? Like, okay, here we are. It's not easy, but you always go back to your sense of purpose. And for me, when it gets real crazy and I need that break, I just get outside, take a walk, and go engage with the students, because sometimes at the level where I am, you lose track of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And as soon as I start to walk around that campus and interact with our students, then I know it brings me back, it grounds me into the sense of purpose that I have and the sense of passion that I have for my life. And I always try to start each day, and I read this somewhere in a book, I don't even remember, a number of years ago, but try to be disciplined enough to think about the things that I'm grateful for. You know, 3 things that I'm grateful for, because there's nothing like gratitude for where you are in your life to be able to just bring you back and reset when, you know, things might feel, you know, slightly off balance. And I guess the last thing on the personal side is having 2 young kids. Nothing like spending some time, like, will you play with me? You know, just taking the time, 5 minutes, and saying, want to play a game, or, you know, read a book together, or something like that, to just kind of reset your thinking, because sometimes you have to be careful about the voices in your head and how you talk to yourself, because, you know, you can create your own reality in many cases, and you have to work hard at really ensuring that you have the right perspective mentally and that you're taking good care of yourself physically.
Well, we have a countdown clock over here. It says 1:43, 42, 41. But we have one more question that I know is going to elicit some response. I'm going to hit it anyway. Chris, you're probably telling me not to, but we're going to do it. And this is the question. So people, we want fulfillment from life, and we want fulfillment from work. But can you have it all? A, so that's a question. Is it attainable, and is having it all overrated?
No, I'll take that.
Okay.
I feel like you can have it all. Like, looking back from where I started, from where I'm at, I feel like you can have it all. It is attainable. But in order to do that, we have to set specific goals for ourselves, right? We gotta realize, especially one thing I learned as a business owner, is that I have to have a succession plan. You know, is my business dying with me? If I fall down today, does the business just close down? Like, who am I molding to take my space? making sure that I have a retirement plan, because a lot of times as business owners, if we're working with someone, we think about the retirement, like, are you on for a retirement plan? But then when it's our business, retirement is like nowhere there, right? And we don't have that plan. So that for me, where it's crucial to create an attainability, is making sure you have your succession plan, making sure you have a retirement plan, have someone in mind that you're building. That's why I have the family in the business, because I have my niece who I'm building and grooming her so I can hand it off. I am retiring in 2025, so very specific goal, yes. So just making sure that I have that successor with me and making sure it's attainable and something, building generational wealth past my years to come.
Thank you, Sharna. Lisa?
Well, I feel like the definition of having it all is different. It's a personal choice and journey for everyone. For some, maybe in your personal space, or it could be at work. But having that balance, I think, is important. And I feel like I have a lot. I don't have everything that I wanted. But I feel really blessed every day because I feel that God had put me in a position where I could see my work being tangible, where it was that person that no one was hiring because they had a horrible resume. I cannot tell you how many talent is missed because of that. And to me, having it all is when we change someone's life, not only at work, but when we meet somebody that maybe needs a word of encouragement, or you feel alone as a small business owner, a woman in a men's world, and having someone to talk to, having a champion that is on your side no matter what, having mentors for seasons in your life that will put you through the next chapter in your so-called life, in the book that we're writing on each other's journey. I will feel that I had it all when it's my last day, and look back and say how many people that I helped through my journey. That will be a complete feeling for me.
All right, Tracy.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to add. I think that they've covered all of that. But I think the key word is equilibrium, and really understanding that on some days, no, not at all. But on other days, really, and when you look at it and it comes out at the end of the day, or the end of the month or the end of the year, things do find a way of, and you control it. I think that's the other thing that's just so critical, is that you can control the balance. So you're the captain, and you get to decide, what's non-negotiable, as we've already discussed, and what is, and what you're going to let in, and what you're not going to let in, because you can't do it all. And I think that's the key thing to remember. So it's all about that equilibrium.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. We are absolutely out of time now, but thank you for sharing that. I think this was a great way to close it out with just this inspiring group of women, and I know everyone has somewhere to go, but if you'd like to ask our panelists after for some personal questions, we certainly can do that. Chris, we'll turn it over, walk off stage. All right, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Safe travels.